Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen. Thanks for joining us, people. The top of my head's not showing, but it's been established. Today's question is, what is the best, and maybe more importantly, what is the worst documentary about music? So I'm coming out of the gate strong on this one, and I'm going to recommend from 2008. It's Until the Light Takes Us, which I first saw, believe it or not, on Shudder a couple years ago. This is a documentary about the early 90s Norwegian black metal scene, and how it kind of devolved into white supremacy, murder, suicide, arson. It's really kind of spooky in that sense to see a music scene just kind of go to hell. It's basically what happens when some of the world's worst people make some of the world's best music, and the conflict in that. I am a big black metal fan. I love black metal. One of my favorite things to do, if you're stuck on a long car ride with somebody who's like, I was into some pretty crazy music in college. Have you ever heard of the Replacements? I put in some Barthery right then. I'm like, ha ha ha, you're going to love this. So yeah, I enjoy doing that. What this does, this focuses on the band Mayhem. So if you're not familiar with the story of Mayhem, which Dan looks like he is, a bass player would be. Mayhem were a Norwegian black metal band. They had gotten a singer named Dead. Dead suffered from something called Cotard syndrome, where he believed that he was a walking corpse. At one point, Dead would do stuff like bury his clothes for a couple days before a show. He was really committed and a really great singer. Actually, he's very talented. So what happened was eventually he committed suicide. He shot himself with a shotgun. Euronymous, who was the guitar player, came home, found him blown away on the couch, went out and bought a little portable camera, because this was the 90s, early 90s, where people had all sorts of internet-y stuff, and then arranged him, and then used that picture for an album cover. They do show the picture in the documentary. I wouldn't have done that. And what they do is, then what he did was he took bits of Dead's skull and made necklaces out of it, and then gave those to people he thought were worthy. At this point, Necro Butcher, the bass player, said, I'm out. And so he was replaced with Bars Vicinus, whose name I always mess up, but I don't care. He's a garbage person. But he's also known as Count Grishnak. He was the guy from Burzum. And I will say right now, the first, I think it's pronounced Philophem, the first Burzum album is a masterpiece. It is actually, when I talk to young people about recording, and I say there's no right way to record something, I will play them that album. And I will say, this guy went out and got the worst drum kit he could find. He played his guitar through his brother's stereo system. For a mic, he used a set of headphones, and this is one of the best records ever made. That said, it's one of the best records ever made by an asshole. So they replaced Necro Butcher with Count Vishnak, and then Vishnak eventually kills Euronymous, the guitar player, and then so he has to go away. But you only get like 21 years for murder in Norway. So what happens is, at this point, Hellhammer, I don't know if they go into this. This is a little extra tidbit, people. Hellhammer, the drummer for the band, is approached by the parents of Euronymous, and they say, can you take the bass off the album? Because we don't want, because, obviously, when the bass player kills the guitar player, it slows down the release of an album by 3 or 4 years, even in Norway. So he says, can you, take the bass off? He says, yeah, I'll take the bass off. I'll play it myself. And then he realizes, I don't know how to play bass. So yeah, unfortunately, Euronymous is on the album when somebody killed him. Count Vishnak is a major asshole, a white supremacist. I'm not going into the 30 or 40 church arsons that they did, or the fact that Faust, the drummer for Emperor, great band, but Faust actually killed a man in a park. Important lesson here, people. Heavy metal does not lead to murder. Homophobia leads to murder. And that's what this was a case of. The film is it's perfect because it's so flawed. That's when we talk about things that are great because there's a problem with them. This film's big problem is that the makers of it let Grishnak talk about like his theories. His theories about Christian baptism is part of a Jewish tradition to make everybody Jewish. And, he's a horrible, horrible individual. And just, the fact that they give him space is not good, but it answers the question, which is, why would anybody listen to this asshole? Who would be enamored by him? And you see grown-up filmmakers, people who had embedded themselves in the scene for like a year, actually become sort of enamored with this guy. And that's the really scary message of it, is that, you know, that they give him the space, which normal people would not have done. So yeah, I heavily do recommend that you see it. It's an important part of our rock and roll history. So it is something that people should learn about. So yeah, that's that. Now my next one, oh, hang on a minute. Anton wants something. Yeah, what? Oh, okay. Anton would like you to know, and this is just from him, is that if you go into the comment section and say that you like metal, and you say, I like metal like Mastodon or Sun O or Death Heaven, Anton will curb stomp your ass. He will get you in your dreams. He can do that. So please just you know, you can chill on letting us know if you're into those bands. The worst documentary about music, I would have to say, is Metallica, Some Kind of Monster, which is from 2004. This is like going from black metal to unintentional black comedy. This is really bad. This is like some of the world's worst music being made by some of the world's worst people. I don't know if you guys, have you ever seen it? I would recommend maybe skipping it and just synopsises of it. So I will give you one. I don't understand why anybody in the Metallica camp let this movie be released. It is, and that goes the same for the album they're working on, Saint Anger or Stanger, which is one of the worst albums of all time. But there's so much in this. There's the polar bear murder. There's Bob Rock, the producer, who is straight out of Spinal Tap and keeps trying to make himself the bass player for Spinal Tap. Listen, fellas, I don't think Spinal Tap needs a bass player. There's the Plexi Ludwig snare. Dean, have you ever heard of Plexi Ludwig snare? It's the one that you hear. It's horrible. It's like the worst thing in the world. And Lars is like, this is going to change the sound of the band. And then Lars auctions off a Basquiat painting that he bought for $3 million for $5 million, something every fan can relate to. It's, they get a therapist that they're paying 40 grand a month to reunite the band. And he does reunite the band, but he reunites the band in the fact that Lars and James go, why are we paying this guy 40 grand a month? And then they start talking. He sounds like Stuart Smalley that used to be on Saturday Night Live. So they start talking like him, like, I'd really like to understand your experience and stuff. I'm like, if another musician said to me, like, I'd really like to understand your experience so I can take part in your journey, I would squeeze their head like a fucking pimple. I was just like, it is the most horrifying. Then there's the whole thing, Jason Newsted, the bass player. They treated him like shit for all these years. And like they kind of admit it and gloss over it, like, oh yeah, well, it's pretty well documented, you know, what we did to Jason. I'm like, does it make it okay? Oh, hang on. Yeah. Oh yeah. Going back to just a callback to the other documentary. So at one point, now this is what I was thinking about when I was thinking about this one. At one point, Necro Butcher, it turns out he's given interviews in the last couple of years. He said he was also planning to kill Euronymous. So Euronymous was killed by one bass player, and the other bass player was planning to kill him. You can't tell me Jason Newsted was not planning to kill Lars and James. You cannot convince me of this. And then there's the pièce de résistance of the, well, first of all, the other thing I'll tell you is this. At one point, this movie makes you feel bad for Dave Mustaine. That is a sentence I never thought would leave my mouth, is I really feel bad for Dave Mustaine. But the best part is, and totally not scripted, okay, when Kirk Hammett looks at the other guys and says, hey, fellas, let's stop hammering on each other and hammer out this album. It is. So with that, I would like to say, hey guys, let's stop hammering on each other and hammer out the rest of this video.
You make me want to see that movie now.
Which one?
The Metallica documentary.
No. See Until the Light Takes Us. And the music is much better. The music is great. It's just the people are garbage people.
Okay, I'll definitely check it out. I think the best documentary about music is Sun Ra, A Joyful Noise. And I know I recommended this already on an earlier episode of Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen. But why I think it is the best documentary out there is because Sun Ra gives this very enlightened and wise philosophy about music. And he also shows you, you also get to see him rehearse. He's very, as he says, he's very disciplined. You get to see him compose, and you get to see him perform a concert. Oh, and just like Let It Be, his art band, the orchestra, performs on a rooftop, but it's in Philadelphia, not in London. And it's only an hour, so it doesn't take that much time out of your life, and it's just chock full of good stuff. Oh, he plays a Rumar DS2, I noticed in my second viewing of it, which is an Italian synthesizer, I found out. And he does it really well. He's really good keyboardist and pianist. He also plays piano in it, and organs. And he talks about humanity as if he's not part of it, which is a little off-putting, but kind of cool too.
Well, he's from Saturn.
Yeah, he's from
That's
Saturn.
what he believes, that he's from Saturn.
And if there's one thing we learned from the move bombing, you have to be pretty brave to be black in Philadelphia and get up on a roof. Really, kudos for that. That takes guts.
Yes, and he also sits in front of the White House for part of it, and he speaks from Museum of University of Pennsylvania as well. Anyway, the worst documentary about music I've ever seen. I haven't even gotten all the way through it. It's called Why Am I Doing This? A film about touring. My review after watching just 10 minutes of it is, why am I watching this? And I got through about 1 hour and 44 minutes of it, and it's just tour horror stories, which you would think would be interesting. And it's about touring bands that were like the Dead Milkmen were when we started, or that independent level of when they drive in vans. But you would think that they'd be better at telling stories. I don't know half these people in the video, but that's more an indictment on me, I guess, for not keeping up.
It's not just one band; it's many bands.
It's many bands. Okay, I know Big Black. I know Steve Albini's in it. He's okay. I mean, I also thought he would have more interesting stories, but of course I didn't. There's still like 30 minutes of it I didn't see, so it goes for 2 hours. It just goes on and on. So yeah, Steve Albini from Shellac, Big Black's in it. Vis Queen, Police Teeth, Silkworm, Bottomless Pit, Type Bros from way back when, Nudity, The Young Evils, The Bismarck Helms, Ali, I don't know. The Most Secret Method. Have you heard of these? The Secret.
I've only heard of Silkworm. I haven't heard of many of those bands.
Melvins I've heard of.
Melvins.
Melvins, Racetrack, whatever. It doesn't matter.
This is like when somebody makes a Kickstarter to make a documentary about a band you never heard of. And I said, they were such a big influence on, and they start listening, like,
well, I just thought,
What inspired you to watch this? Somebody recommended
looking
you?
for, because I have to answer the question.
So he's going to subject himself to some really awful movie watching.
Oh, this one's going to be really bad. I'm going to watch it.
you gotta watch it. Yeah, look for bad. Yeah, if you're stuck, look for a documentary that got bad reviews, because you figure everybody else is going to go with some kind of monster.
Honestly, okay, somebody sent it to me on Instagram and said, you probably know some of these people. And I'm like, no, I don't really know any of these people, but I just started watching and I was like, well, it just so happened, serendipity, Rodney asked about a bad documentary, and this is a pretty bad one. That's all.
Cool.
Oh, it's the tagline for the video is 100% Dave Grohl free.
100% what?
That's a good thing.
100% Dave Grohl free. Dave Grohl
Go
shows
free.
up in a
Well,
lot
then
of
I got to watch it. Yeah. I will watch any documentary about music if there's no Questlove in it or no Tom Morello. I'm down. All right. Just promise me no Questlove or Tom Morello. I'll watch your fucking documentary.
All right.
Well, if you want to see a music documentary without Tom Morello or Questlove, then music documentary you want to see is I Put a Spell on Me by Screamin' Jay Hawkins, which I watched a couple years ago, and then I watched again a little bit of it today just for a refresher. I wouldn't say it's the best, but it's a really interesting one. It has a lot of footage of him in the 90s, like the late 90s, when a guy from the Fuzz Tones, it was confusing because one of the guys from the Fuzz Tones, and then there was a guy from the Flesh Tones, which I think you guys played with before, right?
Oh yeah.
And then
We have a good story about that.
Quarters at the guy's head or something. We'll get there another time. Yeah. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's not only interesting because his music and his stage presence is interesting, but his actual story of his life is pretty fascinating too. Like, he was a sergeant in the military in World War II in Japan. And I'm not going to spoil the story because I recommend, it's also a recommendation that everybody watch this. But it sounds like a movie, the story he tells about his escape from a prisoner of war camp. So, but yeah, I mean, in 1955 or whatever, on Alan Reed's show, he comes out in like a coffin, and I think there was fire sometimes. He had like fireworks and put a bone through his nose. But it's great that he also talks about like his place as an African-American musician at that time, and how a lot of the other ones like Chuck Berry and Little Richard were almost like kind of like dolling up their appearance to look different, like not to look white, but to look like lighter skinned or whatever. And then he comes out with like this African garb, like mocking it, but in the same, also like, you know, he was honoring it too in a way. It's a really amazing story. It's a little under 2 hours, but yeah, it's pretty cool. So you should check it out. And to be honest, it's hard for me to pick a bad documentary because even the bad ones I enjoy, especially with the band I don't like. I was hard pressed to find one, so I chose Leaving Neverland, because I guess that's considered a music documentary. But it infuriated me. I was furious. You remember, Chrissy and I watched that a couple of years. I was furious, and I've talked to you guys before about my opinion on that whole thing.
Children followed the Reese's Pieces back to Neverland Ranch, and that's consent. And Dan, did you know
even if I agreed with the accusations, I would still think it was a poorly done movie.
Okay, this is a hard one for me. I'm going to start with the worst. I mean, like Dan said, the worst documentaries sometimes are just kind of funny to watch. And one that comes to mind, and I remember, I'm pretty sure I saw this one in the theater. It came out in 1976. It's The Song Remains the Same with Led Zeppelin. It has some great lines in it, some hilarious lines like, when do we go on tour? Tomorrow. There's like these scenes where they're like dressed up in costumes. There's like, it opens with their was it Richard Grant, their manager, dressed as a mafioso, just shooting up a room with a machine gun, and he's killing these people. And then there's the big like Madison Square Garden concert series, you know, sequence in it interspersed with these dramatic, you know, scenes that they act out and play different characters. It's really, really kind of hilariously bad.
And there's a scene in that movie where they get like $3,000 stolen from them, and most people are like, "How could a rock band ever accumulate $3,000?"
So that's I mean, you should watch it because it's so bad it's good, or it's good because it's so bad. I don't know. One of my picking a favorite is kind of hard. I'm going to go with We Jam Econo, which is about the Minutemen. It came out a few years ago. I own the DVD of that. I looked online. It doesn't seem to be streaming anywhere right now. But if you get a chance to watch it, it's just a great documentary about the Minutemen, about their history and about touring. And, you know, they were kind of an important band for me, and kind of the Milkmen kind of looked up to them in terms of how they ran their show. And they weren't like a straight hardcore band, which we never were. So it kind of resonated with me in that regard. And you know, it's just a really great overall movie. I don't think Dave Grohl's in it, but Flea is. So the others that I considered, I don't even, Rodney, this probably wouldn't qualify, but a great movie is 24-Hour Party People.
That is a great, yeah, it's a fictionalized, the same reason that, what is the Lords of Chaos, which is the dramatization of the documentary, Until the Light Takes Us. I couldn't include that. 24-Hour Party People is one, if it's on, I'll watch it. I mean, I saw it in the theater, and then Vienna and I went to a club called Glam that wouldn't let us in.
Two other honorable mentions for great ones are, one is, it's only available on Showtime. It's the one about XTC called This Is Pop, which is really good. And the other one came out in 1979. It's The Kids Are All Right, about The Who. That's also a really fun one to watch too.
I thought you were going to give mad props to Synth Britannia. I was waiting for it.
I'll include the link. Synth Britannia is, it's hard to see because YouTube keeps taking it down for copyright reasons.
No, it's not. All you have to do is take your VPN, set your VPN. And if you don't have a VPN, just send me your social security number, because that's what you're. Yeah, take your VPN. If you have a VPN, set it to the UK, and you can watch this. So,
yeah, Prague Britannia is also kind of fun too.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, those are mine.
Good.
Jam Econo's, Jam Econo's been on YouTube for almost a decade and hasn't been taken.
What is?
We Jam Econo.
Oh, is it on YouTube? Okay, I didn't know that.
Joe, I think we saw that at International House, right? Didn't we go see that at International House?
The low budget saw it while we were on tour in Seattle.
Has it been really out that long? I didn't realize.
Okay.
Yeah,
I remember we were in a theater. I thought we knew the people around.
Yeah, we saw it in a theater.
Yeah.
We were with JP.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So
anyway,
that's a good. That was like my runner-up.
In Seattle.
I don't think it's that well done, I guess, but I still like watching Decline of Western Civilization. It's a good one.
Oh, yeah, because
1, 2, and 3.
It's very quotable too.
Yeah.
So it's like
I've never seen. Have you ever seen? I've never seen Heavy. Is it Heavy Metal?
The Metal Years. Decline. I've seen Decline the Metal Years about 1,000 times. Oh my God, that is so many train wrecks crammed into one movie. Oh, if you've never seen Decline the Metal Years, you must see it. It's up there with Heavy Metal Parking Lot as something you should see. The best thing in Heavy Metal Parking Lot are the two girls talking about Rob Halford going, "We fuck his brains out." Like, not getting the message, are you, ladies? Rob Halford's a god walking the earth, breaking the law. I love that dude.
All right.
Recommendations?
Watch all these movies.
Yeah, watch them all. Yeah. My recommendation for this week is Deathgasm from 2015. Usually comedy and horror do not mix. For every Tucker and Dale versus Evil, you're going to have 1,000 Dracula dead and loving it. But in this case, this bucks that trend. Deathgasm, spelled in all caps. Why? Because lowercase is for pussies. It also has my favorite joke about getting to second base. It's all about a young man who's into black metal, and this is with our theme because Anton and I are into black metal mood tonight. This is an incredibly funny film. Like literally every line in the film is great. See it, you'll laugh your ass off from the very beginning all the way. There's a post-credit scene that's funny, and it just keeps hitting, boom, boom, boom. At one point, they're hoping to use, to blast some music, they're hoping to use the speakers in the school. And the one kid explains, he goes, "Our music department is so poor that we all had to share the same recorder." I can still taste it. Every line. And I'm not giving much away because it is so damn funny. So yeah.
Did you ever see Psycho Beach Party? That movie's great.
That's pretty good. Deathgasm, I think Deathgasm takes a lot of those films. So yeah, if you get a chance, seek out Deathgasm. Again, Shudder has it. I watched it the other day, just to have something in the background, and I kept my attention kept getting drawn to it because it is so damn funny. At one point, there's what happens when someone first hears black metal, what goes on in their head, and it is perfect. So yes, Deathgasm, the greatest black metal horror comedy of all time.
I'd like to recommend a YouTube cooking channel called Sam the Cooking Guy. You may have heard of him. He has over 1 million subscribers, so probably somebody knows of him who's watching this. But he's a 61-year-old Canadian living in San Diego, and he shows you, step by step, like lots of cooking things do, how to make different things. And my boyfriend and I've made several of the recipes. We made the pizza once that he has, and it's turned out really good. And it sounds complicated, but it's really easier than you'd think.
Does he do baking and like dessert stuff too?
He does desserts too. I haven't made any of his desserts, but he does some. He does a bacon, lettuce, and tomato that's awesome. I don't know, cool. The way he cooks the bacon. Yeah, I recommend it.
He's Canadian. He's cool.
He is. He's very cool. He's very hip.
Is he Rob Halford hip?
Although
No one's Rob Halford hip. No one.
He probably curses too much.
He's Rob Halford hip. Yes.
Cool. I would like to recommend, I just realized another runner-up was music documentaries, The Daddy of Rock and Roll. It's about Wesley Willis, who was, I guess he was diagnosed schizophrenic and bipolar, and I guess living on the streets at some point, but some people heard him playing music and kind of got him like a record deal. And I don't know if you've ever heard his music, but it's really interesting. I saw him live, and it was pretty amazing. And he has this like red spot on his head, and he says like, say rock. And then he pushes his head against yours, and then he's like, say roll. And you got to say rock and roll. And then he pushes his head, and like, it's soft. It's like a little tomato. But he's dead now. And he's actually an incredible artist too, like a fine artist too, like his drawings and, but it's there's a really good glimpse into like who he is as a person too, and not just like, because when you watch some of the live performances, and I was at one, and I would see like people like laughing and stuff, and it is like funny stuff, but at the same time, it's like a whole bunch of like these white guys laughing, and you're kind of like, oh.
Yeah, that's my take on the Wesley Willis thing.
I'm also afraid 20 years ago, and I actually really enjoyed what he was doing, and that's why I went to see him. Like, it was not a mockery thing at all. Like, I was fascinated by it. I've always liked that kind of stuff. I don't know. It's a good documentary. You watch it, you get a glimpse into him, into his life, and but yeah, I also wanted to recommend this book that I don't know if somebody recommended before, but it's great. I'm not going to get into it, but it's basically. It's good motivation for like when you're doing creative stuff. He's written several books. Here's another one. This one's good too, because this helps you kind of like, I don't know, I sometimes worry that I'm ripping people off or whatever, and he's not telling you to rip people off, but he's saying like, you got to change the way you look at that, like how you look at that kind of stuff, and how we all digest things that we're influenced by. So, yeah. All right.
I'm always worried that Sarah from Youth Code is going to do that forehead thing, because she always hits herself in the head with a mic.
It'll get there at some point. I think he does it to everybody he meets.
I'm going to email Sarah right after this meeting.
My recommendation is to spend the $2 or $3 on rent. The song remains the same this week.
I'm going to rent it tomorrow.
I saw that at a midnight showing, and I thought,
I heard that.
That is in all caps. You know why? Because lowercase is for pussies. Speaking of dead guys, can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you swear to me that if anything should happen to me, like an accident where the top of my head comes off and my brain's exploded, you will get a picture of it, put it on an album cover, all right? And if there's any bits of my head left, take those and make necklaces out. It wasn't cool for Deb, but I'm saying it's cool for me. Not only that, but I love the idea of these people like, oh, the Dead Milkmen, they did Punk Rock Girl. Let's see what they're up to.